Okay, hello ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to game design and development in Minecraft. We're all from CubeCraft, so we're going to give you an insight into how we develop and design games theoretically. There is a lot in this presentation where we're going to go through the workflow of how you would design and develop games, but please remember that you don't necessarily have to go through every stage. That's the wonderful thing with design and development. I'm John, I'm the CEO and owner of CubeCraft, and I'll let the other people introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Mac, and I'm the project and community manager for CubeCraft.
Hi, I'm Luke, also known as Rubik Cube Man, and I'm the lead game developer at CubeCraft.
My name's Samuel. I'm also known as MINECON. Previously, I'm a minigame developer. I've worked on Turbo Kart Racers and Pixel Painters and Hypixel Skywars. And recently with CubeCraft, I've worked on Mineware and Blockband.
Hi, my name is Zed. I'm also known as Ginger Geek, and I'm the lead back-end developer. I don't have any exciting projects, but if it goes wrong, the network goes down, so I'm here to do that.
Yeah, it's basically his fault if we're offline. So. OK, so yeah, let's just get in. So this is a flow of what we're going to be doing. So first up is concepts and ideas, which is going to be Mac and Mini's part.
So you can get ideas for games from anything, but one of the really common ways that you get ideas for Minecraft games is existing games. As you can see above, on the left we have kind of a typical tower defense game, and on the right is a top-down view of a map for our tower defense game, which is clearly you can see where the inspiration came from. It's based on the genre of tower defense, and it plays just like any tower defense you've ever played.
And then this is another example where we got inspiration from an existing game in games of Rock Band and Block Band on the right.
You can also get ideas for games that already exist in Minecraft. Everyone here knows Skywars, I'm assuming. It's a very popular game.
Some of us can't play it because we're too bad at it.
Yeah. And Egg Wars, which is one of our most popular games, probably our most popular, yeah, was inspired by Skywars-style gameplay. It's got some changes like the egg and the generators for money, which many of you obviously know. But it came from the style of Skywars. So we took a game that was already popular and looked at what we could add to make it a slightly more unique game.
Right. Another example is Mineware. This is based on the popular game WarioWare, which was on DS, I think. And we adapted it to Minecraft.
Yeah.
And so this is about, we adapted a lot of games from existing games. And one task we often have to do is how do we translate common game mechanics into Minecraft game mechanics. For example, this is tower defense from a first-person point of view. So when a player plays, that's what he sees. And you can see that there are a few things. First, it's first person, because it's Minecraft. We can't change that from the server side. So that means that when you want to place towers, for example, well, you need to use a sword in your hand. And then when you click on the location you want to place your tower, it opens up a menu, and then you can choose which sort of tower you want. And then another problem, which is common with Minecraft, is hard to communicate the information to the players, because we're trying to use every tool possible. Which you can see, for example, on the right, there's the points from the tower defense game, for example.
So when you're taking a game and trying to convert it to work with Minecraft, one of the places we go for inspiration is actually the Minecraft wiki. We look at different mobs, different blocks, and how they work in the game, and that can give ideas on how you can convert an idea like a tower defense game to actually work within Minecraft using things that exist. For example, in Egg Wars, we have the villager shops, which just uses the normal villager shops that everyone knows from vanilla Minecraft. And it has the benefit of being recognizable to Minecraft players because everyone knows the villager shops from vanilla Minecraft. But using them in an existing game lets us take that and build upon it to create our own custom content.
The point is that before trying to develop the game, you need to have an idea. And once you have done a lot of minigames, you still need to be creative about it. And as you mentioned, one of the ways to get these ideas is from Minecraft itself. You look at game mechanics in the game, like you can see them from the wiki. It's an excellent source. And it also, the wiki, when creating games themselves, there are tons of stuff that devs, I go like every day on this website to look at like formatting codes all the time because I forget them. And also the game mechanics are all explained on the wiki.
Yeah.
So this slide, it's a bit what I mentioned, is that we really try to use all the UI in Minecraft. And basically, when you've done a lot of minigames in Minecraft, you start to get in this mentality of this niche of Minecraft game development, right? So when I see Minecraft, right, I see these things. For example, the title you see in the middle, this was added in 1.8. And I know that because I read the patch notes all the time. Mostly players will read the patch notes to be able to know, oh, well, they added polar bears, or they added stuff. But when I read patch notes as a minigame dev, all I see is like, what can I create? What can I do more? Where can I push the game? So here you have all examples on the right. You have the sidebar, boss bar at the top, which is, they added in 1.9. You can have multiple ones. You have the title bar, the chat, and then you can even use the experience bar to show information. For example, the level that you typically have with experience bottle, you can use with show cooldowns, for example, or the progress bar in Block Band, it plays music, right? And we show the progression of the song in the experience bar. And we really try to use everything possible to push the game. And same for the maps. You can display information on the maps that you can see with item displays, right? Yeah. And you can also use holograms. This is like a fancy term for invisible armor stands. And when you really combine all of that, you can create a new experience.
Yeah, because within Minecraft itself, there's not a lot of custom things that you can do, but using all of the elements together allows you to create something that's completely different. Like we do with our big map boards, we show nice graphics on there, and that's not something that's built into Minecraft. And it's something that you can use the aspects and see how you can modify them to create an output.
Just to add on to that for a second, we see features that get added to Minecraft as tools we can use to create more exciting games. Yep. You know, you might see, oh, they added a polar bear, or they added this, and it's, oh, that's a cool mob, but we look at how can we take that and do something custom with it to create something new.
You also look at something like a polar bear, and it's like, great, polar bears. I'll make a game where polar bears chase people. And that's one idea, but also you've got the polar bear AI and how it moves. So you could create an invisible polar bear and use its AI to track a player in a certain way. And that allows you to build a game that's maybe a boulder that's chasing a user. And it's things like that that it gets added, and you think, oh, that's nice, cool. And in survival, that's pretty much it. But in a minigame, you can go and add content on top of that.
And we also try to always look at the patch notes, and when there's a new version of Minecraft, we try to create games which introduce these things. Like we added a map on Eggwars, I think, which has the Elytra. And in Mineworlds, there are tons of minigames which use new features from 1.9, for example, or 1.10.
And then this slide, this is talking about adding EULA-compliant things into our games. So right from the development process, we start to look at different cosmetics and vanity items that we can give our players that either already have ranks or things that will sort of entice users to go ahead and buy a rank. So we have that sort of monetization side from the initial concept. Because if you add it in as an afterthought, it's going to stick out like an afterthought. So it's kind of nice to try and get it in the initial idea as well. Yeah,
and when it's a network our size, for example, there are really two ways to do monetization while being EULA compliant. You can either have network-wide features like the cubeless, for example. It's like the mystery box, and you can do unlockables with points which you get from ranks, etc. These are network-wide stuff. That's what most people think about when they want to try and monetize their own server. But you can also do game-specific stuff. Obviously, it requires that you're able to create your own games. But for example, in Build Battle, you could change the colors of the worlds, for example. Or in Minerware, we could let donators choose what games they'd like to see in one instance of the game, for example.
Yeah, and then in Block Band, you can go ahead and with vanity points, you can choose what stage and how it looks. Because it doesn't change the game, but it gives the user a little more customizability. And it's a relatively easy thing to add into the game if it's there from the beginning.
Yeah, so like, if you have the resources to create your own game or add content, or even if you're using a public plugin to create your games, if you are able to customize it to add game-specific features, that's really going to help, and players like it too.
Yeah. So this is sort of the ideal thing that you will put together when you're starting to make a game. And we do a lot of it sort of mentally, or we do it in our team communication, and we'll go through and we'll do it. So we'll create an overview, we'll figure out how we want it to play, we figure out the technical side of how it's going to be built, and then we detail everything. Like, as we were discussing when we were preparing for this panel, you've got everything down to what happens if a player leaves? What message does it show? When a player is killed, what message does it show? Is that going to be translated into different languages? Who's going to have to work on that? And having as much detail into that initial document will save you a lot of stress when you come down the line and someone goes, hey, did you add languages into this game, or is it going to be something we have to add later?
Basically, it mentions the document is the game design document. So once you have your idea and you know like how it's going to play and how it's going to look, and how you're going to monetize it, then you really need to nail down every point. And they do that all the time in real studios. Well, we're basically a real studio at this point.
No, we're a fake studio. Come on.
Basically, my point is, if you have a complete game design document, like every text which is going to be displayed to the players, every menu, like every button, where it is going to help the developers. But also, it depends on the teams, because sometimes you may have a developer which has some creative insight to put in the game and prefers something which is more abstract. But for example, if you're starting your own server and you want to bring your own ideas, the most value you can bring is by creating a true document which documents everything you want to do. And then you can hire someone to do it.
Yeah. So like for mini example, we just write a game, and then someone comes out and does it. It's fantastic. But yeah, so is it going to go? Yeah, so moving along, we get into our next phase, which is development and testing, which is a very fun part. And this is going to be Mini and Rubik.
OK, so we develop our games on the Spigot software and use Bungee Cord to connect up all our games. We'll explain how this software works later on when Zed explains how our infrastructure works, just a bit. But every part of the network has these things called APIs, which are basically a way of us simplifying down how we write our code, so we don't have to tackle the problem of a game all at once, right from the beginning again, where we write every single bit of information that we send to the user. Spigot helps us simplify down how we do this, so we can just send a message to a player with a single line of code. So it helps to simplify our job. And as you can see at the bottom here as well, we've got the CubeCraft logo. That's because we wrote our own parts, our own libraries, which help to simplify stuff as well. So when we send floating text and holograms, as Mini explained earlier, we only have to write very little code to do such a thing, because it's simplified into a library which does all the work for us.
Yeah, and if you're getting started in development, it's a very good thing to do, because as you build a bigger network, if you want to change one part of your code, it makes it a lot easier in the long run, because you just change the background library and go, oh, well, we don't want to use MySQL for our database anymore. We want to switch it to this new technology, and that allows you to do that.
If you have like no experience at all with making games or like even programming, basically we're using Spigot, and as you mentioned, Spigot offers APIs, and an API is just a set of code which you can use. But the basics of it is that if you want to do like in-depth mini games like CubeCraft or Mineplex or Hypixel, well, you'll need to learn programming or hire someone to do it. But Spigot, it's written in Java, and pretty much everything Minecraft, except for the Pocket Edition stuff and the Windows 10, is Java too, like what you're playing on CubeCraft. And So Java is, at the same time, it's a runtime, and it's also a programming language. And yeah, so when you learn Java, the basics of it, you can go on the Bucket wiki. It's a bit outdated. Or you can look up tutorials on YouTube or on the Spigot forums to learn how to apply your Java knowledge to Minecraft. Yeah.
Out of interest, who here already develops or designs games? If you raise your hand, because we're not telepathic, unfortunately. That'd be a really good way to get game ideas. And who here is here because they want to learn just how game development works and hopefully go on to make games? OK, so that's a lot more. So that's good. We can be very theoretical and teach you all the best practices. Everyone who develops games knows that they never happen. But yeah, moving on to away from that, there's a few development tools that we use. And this isn't an exhaustive list, and this is why I ask you. These aren't the ones you have to use. These are just the ones we use and we like.
Yeah, but they do accomplish a certain set of needs. They respond to certain needs, and what you can do is just, if you have, these are mostly for larger teams, but if you're getting started, what you can just do is like Google their name and write alternative next to it, and then you can find an alternative.
Probably the most important logo on there is Git, which is source control, which allows you to keep track of your files as you change them. And when you do game development, that is a really good thing to have. So we just released our 1.8 network back to the community. And the reason why we could do it so easily is we still had all our 1.8 code in Git, even though it was like 6 months ago. So all we did was pull our code up and click revert to this commit, which was a 1.8 commit, make sure everything worked, update it for all of the new libraries we've added, and you have all your code. And it's really useful once you start working with multiple developers if the entire repository is not initial commit. Because that's not helpful. You don't know what features have been added in. So having that source control as early as possible is, again, a theoretical good thing to have in development.
I can also add to all the other tools, basically. IntelliJ, if you're just starting out Java, this is a good tool. They have a free version. It's IntelliJ Community Edition. And I really believe that for a beginner, using this piece of software will help you learn faster. Maven is a package management thing. So basically, we said, oh, we're using libraries, APIs, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff we hook up into our code using Maven. MySQL is the database, so everything, your player statistics, how many cube lists, how many experience, your level, all the stuff is saved in MySQL. Git, you just went over. Slack, it's a team communication tool. So we don't use Skype, for example. We don't use SMS, right? We use Slack because it's a prominent tool. It's upcoming, and I mean, if you try it, like you have a team of like 5 person over the world, you just try it and you'll understand why we like it. Active Collab is a task management thing. So basically, this is the favorite tool of Mac because he's a project manager. He spends all his time there and he annoys us. That's what it's used for.
Yeah, and we also get all our tools to work together. So Active Collab and Slack work really nicely together. So when someone makes a new task in Active Collab, it goes into our Slack and tells us. Or if someone mentions the word bug on Slack, it tells them to post it on Active Collab because I'm not scrolling through that many messages in Slack. And it's really useful to have tools that like to work together.
I mean, the whole point of all these tools is just to make everything for us developers easier. If we have Git, then we can just use that, and it just makes it all easier for us, as in managing what we're doing, and we can spend more time coding rather than faffing around trying to work out what we're meant to be doing.
But if you're just starting out, just get IntelliJ and start writing plugins.
So
so once you have the idea of everything you want to do, you have the game design document, or you just have do this, please. What you have to do then is take the game design document or take the game design and break it down into parts. Actually, at least that's what I do. For example, Egg Wars here, you can think of like, OK, so what systems do I need at Egg Wars? Yeah, I need villager shops. How am I going to do them? Player spawning, that's usually the first thing I do when I create a game. So like, you get them from a config file, or you get them from the database, or like, what is it? Coin generation is like the, if you you all played Egg Wars, it's like the
Tokens.
Tokens, which
That's how you get all of the items in Egg Wars. It's quite a key part of the game.
Yeah, I meant the generators. Like you have diamonds popping out and the iron. This is another system. And then the kits is another big system that you have to think about. And the trick to be productive is like to do them one at a time. And then once you have all of them that you can test individually, you just hook them up and make sure that it works.
And hope it works.
Yeah. Well, other kind of another slide, but another kind of system that I can break down is, for example, Minerware. The first system is to be able to. Minerware is a game where, like WarioWare, you have a bunch of minigames. So, like, as I described it, it's pretty obvious the first system is to make it so you're able to play multiple different games, and then you implement one game at a time. What other game? What other game, for example? Does anyone have an example of a game? I could break it down. Right, so Spleef, it's a game where you have a bunch of players on a platform with snow, and they have shovels, and diamond shovels usually, and they need to remove the snow under the players. So the first thing I would do, as I said, is get the players spawned on the arena. So you get that. I would do that from a configuration file. So what I would have is Spleef is just one platform, so I have the world saved somewhere, and when I load it, I'm going to have one location, which is going to be the center of the platform, and then I'm going to spawn the players in a radius, in a circle. That's use some maths. I always Google the maths. And then, so that's my first system. My second one is I need to give the items to the players. I need to give him a shovel so he's able to break them super fast. So I would add something so the shovels are super efficient. And then the other system is when they fall down a certain y coordinate. So a player location is like x, y, z. That's how we know where they are. So y is like the height. And if they go down too much, then they lose. And then you need to that's the three systems there are to Spleef. It's a pretty simple game. And then to hook them all up together, you need to have a beginning and an end to the game. So you would have a countdown and then add a sidebar. And that's pretty much the game.
Thank you for choosing an easy game, because that could have taken hours, to be quite honest. It's like Spleef, great.
I think the main point, though, is that when you're taking on a new game like Egg Wars, for example, from scratch, it's a lot of work. So breaking it into parts helps you kind of work on small parts, and it doesn't feel so daunting. So by compartmentalizing it, you can focus on making individual parts perfect before you move on, and it makes it feel like a more manageable project.
Yeah. So this is how the development cycle theoretically goes, which is you develop, you test, you gather your feedback, and I'd say 90% of the time, well, 99% of the time, that is exactly the process that we go through. A developer creates a new version of the game, it goes into testing, we gather the feedback, some of it's useful, some of it's not, and then it goes back into the development cycle. And this can either be pre-release or post-release, because it's a continuously changing process. And there's sort of two types to the initial testing that we do, which is there's the feature testing, as in, can you actually spawn? Can you get the items from the villager? Can you trade tokens in? But also the is it fun testing, which is, does it actually take too long to get the items in, Egg Wars? Do I get enough tokens, or is it just really slow and just grindy of constantly doing the same thing over and over again? And the way that we do it is we use our staff members a lot. So we just have a testing team. We throw a new version to them, and we go, hey, can you go play this game, please? And they go, sure. And they go and play it, and then they go, it's broken. And we go, do you have anything to say to that, or do they just say it's broken?
Oh, it's broken.
Yeah, it's broken.
Then we get like forum reports with like it doesn't work, and essays of what needs fixing, and it's just
and that all goes on Active Collab.
Yeah, it all goes into Active Collab, and someone will go at it and go, oh, it's broken, cool, done.
And also from a practical point of view, on CubeCraft, we have our dev machines, but because of our setup, we can't really test it on the dev's machine, but we have a test environment which is duplicated from the production. And that's pretty common in every software environment.
Yeah. So we have a test network, and we have our live production network. The test network's where we test everything, and that's just basically the production network, but with no players on, apart from the ones that we choose.
It's a really sad life on the test network.
It's great, though, because I'm #1 on Skywars there, so we know who's there. But yes, so then we go into sort of the next part of our development cycle, which is map building and level design, which, if you've ever played on CubeCraft, it's probably the part that we spend the most time on, because it's what really, really makes a game. It's not something that you can just breeze through and place a few blocks and it works, because Luke, who's out in the crowd, does fantastic stuff as our builder for actually building all of these maps. So if you love any of the maps, it's because he and the build team built them. So this will be Rubik and Mac, which is nice because I can just stare this way now.
OK, so this is FFA, one of our games, where everyone just joins the map and they get to fight. And we had 2 maps here, and
sorry, I wiggled the cable.
We had 2 maps there.
Yeah.
And the map on the right is just a normal map where everyone just goes in and they can fight as much as they want. However, the map on the left looks very, very different, and there are islands. And when I got given this map to configure it, I looked at it and I didn't think it would work out too well as an FFA map, like the map on the right. So what I did is I thought I might just quickly type in a line of code that basically gave every map on the gave every player on that map the Electra, which meant they could fly around. And I then presented this to the staff, and they seemed to really love it. And from there on, we put this into production. So different map styles can come up with different ideas and different gameplay, because like having an Electra is very, very, very different to having just a normal fighting map.
Yeah, and that's a prime example of something where the level design makes 2 completely different experiences for the players. So you can have the same piece of game code running in the background, but 2 different maps means that you can get twice the number of players going through it.
So when you're building a map, one part of it is obviously making it look good. That's important. But a lot of people don't consider the gameplay when making a map. For example, on a PvP game where you can't destroy the environment, you don't want to have tall grass, because you try and hit it, it comes back, and it prevents you from actually being able to hit what you're trying to hit, and it's really annoying. So there are a lot of small things you have to consider when making a game, such as what type of game it is. If you want to go to the next slide.
Yeah, sure.
For example, here we have a tower defense map on the top and a free-for-all map on the bottom. The tower defense map has requirements where it has to have lanes for the mobs to go down, places to build your towers. It has a lot of very strict requirements for what makes it usable for the game. Whereas a free-for-all map, which is just free-for-all PvP, it just needs to be an area where people can fight. There doesn't need to be very much specific requirements. So each game has very different needs when it comes to maps.
OK, as you can see here, these are 3 different Egg Wars maps. And originally, we started off with the maps in the bottom left, the normal circle, in which everyone just spawned on an island, and they could go for the middle to get the better generators. And like the better generators are always in the middle, and you got generators on your own island. However, recently, we've been trying to come up with different layouts for maps. And as you can see in the top left, we have the salami slices coming off the pizza in the middle. And you each spawn on a pizza slice. So it plays very differently. And that was our Christmas special map on the right, in which there was train tracks that you could walk along. So every island was actually connected. However, traveling along the train tracks was a risky route, because you could easily fall through them. So how you played the game was very, very different, because you could get to the middle on the Christmas map a lot quicker than you could on the other maps.
Yeah, so any of you who've played Egg Wars know that you probably have some favorite maps you like a lot and some you don't, because the map changes the game a lot.
Yeah. And then we get into maps where, as Luke said earlier, he added Elytra in, and it makes a completely different game. So this is one of our maps, and anyone who plays Tower Defense might recognize it. It's the Portal map. But this is the Portal map before it was fixed. So there's a few bits in the Portal map that's custom coded to deal with the portals. But the other thing we do is we give everybody night vision, so you can actually see the entire map. Otherwise, you don't see the edges. And this is something that is quite easy to overlook, but it means that you can build things without a load of glowstone or torches lighting everything up. And it actually creates that feel of Portal, which is just a very bright room with a lovely walkway going through it.
Yeah, it's similar to the tall grass. You know, there's requirements for different games, and you have to think more than just what the map looks like. Is it actually playable? Is it usable for that game?
And as I said, we get some wonderful maps from our build team, but sometimes they build things like this, and it's like, whoa, why are there so many pressure plates? And you look at it and you go, it's cool and it looks great, but it doesn't function well for the lobby, because what's really funny is in our lobbies, if you go over a pressure plate, you actually get catapulted forwards, which would happen a lot in there, because as you would hit the next one, you'd get catapulted forwards again. So you'd probably end up going off that map quite quickly, but literally and physically in that case. Go on.
There are also performance issues with having a map like that. And often the most experienced map makers, they will make sure that the map works well on the player's client. Because a lot of players that we have low-end PCs. So if there's a bunch of stained glass or like bad things, and bad things happen, yeah.
Yeah, it's like whenever we do playtesting, that's an important part of the staff testing is we have, I've got a lovely MacBook Pro and it runs Minecraft fantastically, but some people don't. They have netbooks and that's what they run. And with particle effects and all of these different things you can add in games, they're fantastic, but they take up the user's resources, and we always have to be mindful about that as well.
It's actually one of my favorite pastimes if I ever go onto the main network and try and play with players, to actually go onto the main lobbies and just will that everything's have pressure plates on, because all the players just suddenly explode from the middle, and then I usually get told off.
And we wonder why our network breaks.
Also, you call it CubeCraft. He just called it the main network. So you see how deep he is in the rabbit hole, right?
Yeah. So you might have noticed that on our flowchart we sort of missed something, and that was because I'd already made the graphics and couldn't be bothered editing them all. So we'll just add in testing and deployment, which the wonderful GingerGeek/Z is going to speak about. You got a whole 2 claps. I'm impressed. Don't clap him. I was impressed he got 2 claps, right?
So I usually get a game from one of our lovely devs, and I need to work out how we're actually going to get it out to you. So give me a cheer if you play on CubeCraft.
I wonder how many of those actually played and how many were just awkward cheers from people next door who didn't want to admit they don't play on the 2nd biggest network in the world.
So there are quite a lot of you. We have to deal with 20 to 30,000 players online at once, and actually making sure you can play the game you want is the main challenge which I deal with. Because if you think about it, we've got loads of games, and for each of those games, we have loads of different maps. So we actually have about 700, nearly 1,000 different configurations for each server. So when I get a game, we go through a kind of process from getting it to actually deploying it. So the first thing we do is it will go through, before we start staff testing, is it goes through a code review. So me and usually Luke will sit down and look at the game, and we'll make sure everything's in order. We make sure it's using our APIs correctly. We look at performance and configuration and code design. And that just makes sure that, in general, all of our code's quite nice and clean and will run efficiently. And then what happens is, like we said with the testing, is we go into staff testing, where we get all our staff team together. We've got 50 of us, and we actually just play the game and see how it works, and we take feedback from that. Because you have to remember, during development, it's just 1 or 2, and we test on our test network, so we actually only have maybe 3 or 4 players max if we can get devs testing on it. So that first full staff testing phase is a really important stage in our thing. So if we look at once we've got it deploying, so if you're a user, you connect to, like we said, a bungee cords, a front-end server on this diagram. And what that basically allows us to do, so we obviously can't have 20,000 people on one vanilla Minecraft server unless we put it on the world's fastest supercomputer.
You lied to me. That was how I was told it all worked. We just had one PC.
Just one PC for 20,000 players. Yeah.
It's the one under my desk, isn't it? That's marked "Do Not Turn Off."
Yeah. The internet's in a black box with a button on it. But what we basically do is you do actually join a modded vanilla Minecraft server, but we can just bounce you between them using bungee cords, and that allows us to have lobbies and games all separated. So when I get a game, some of the things I need to think about is making sure you have the right number of games available. So how we do that is we have a piece of software called Network Control, and it looks at what's currently running on the network, and then it looks at the games we have and all the maps we have, and it says, oh, it looks like, say, what's the map in Egg Wars?
End.
End. So it says, oh, there are loads of people playing the End map, and we don't have any of them in a lobby state at the moment. So what it'll do is it'll say, hey you, game 2723, you are now going to be an Egg Wars end map, and the game 2723 will go, yeah, sure, and it all sorts itself out and becomes a map, and then you can see it on that lovely signboard. So when we're looking at the kind of major deployment bit, we do a lot of testing of the actual deployment. So we have a 14-day deployment pipeline, which has just come into action, and
just literally about 36 minutes ago, it came into action.
Yeah. No, it's been around for a bit. But what that basically means is we do dry deployments on our test network. So we'll take our test network and we'll just make sure that if we run all our upgrade scripts and all that, they just work. And especially with all the compass things, you'll see often if we do a game release, there'll be a nice countdown on the compass, and that allows us to make sure you're all hyped for the release of what.
That's literally the most stressful part of any of our deployments, by the way, is trying to remember the color codes for the compass that we can do a countdown. Because we do it so infrequently, it's like, is it at 6 or is it, no, it's 1, isn't it? Or is it F? And it's a big discussion in Slack.
Yeah. So yeah, that's more or less what I do, and it's all about just trying to make sure you can actually play the games, because delivering content to 20,000 people is actually a big challenge. Like if we were a standalone game, we'd probably be top 150, top 50 possibly Steam games in the world. So we are actually a pretty big scale, and it is it's pretty fun to
the
manage.
scale of the network when you get to the point that we're at is ridiculous. Like we go to hosting providers and you ask them for something, and you're not just asking for a small thing. It's ridiculous what you're asking them for. This lovely designed graphic that I designed myself is just showing how a user goes through our network. So they connect to a front-end server, as Ed said, and then we can bounce them to any of our back-end servers, and that allows us to update a game or a configuration or a map on any of the back-end servers without it affecting the players.
I mean, this diagram isn't to scale. We actually have about 3,000 of the back-end servers and nearly, I think, at least 20 up to 40 of the front-end servers.
But I couldn't fit them all on because the text.
But if we put that on, it might be a bit small. It would just be like loads and loads of every pixel size. But yeah, if you guys, I'll probably stop there. But if you have any specific questions, I'll happily answer them in the Q&A.
That's why we have 20,000 servers. That's why when they crash, we all cry.
Yeah.
And I'd like to add that if you're looking at this diagram and you're thinking, oh, I want to make games, I don't really care about all that stuff.
You don't need this.
Well, if you're just starting out, you can really just make games on one machine, and then you don't have to worry about bungee cord and all that stuff. And then if you're really good at making games, well, getting the idea is one thing, getting the programming it, implementing it is another thing. If you're good at these two things, you're pretty well set to have success, and then you're able to hire someone like him to do this.
Yeah. Or if you're really good at games and you want to go to make them and don't really want to do all of this, sometimes we post job opportunities on our website, so feel free to apply. But from there, we'll go on into our Q&A. I'm sure people will have questions, and we'll try and answer them for as long as we can before they chuck us out of the room. So if you have a question, there are microphones to my right, your left, and to my left. Well, yeah, both sides of the room, basically, is what I was trying to say.
Where are the emergency exits?
The emergency exits are at the rear of the room. So we'll start on my right, if you want to ask a question, and we'll do our best to answer it, maybe.
So when you began game developing, game design, where exactly did you learn it? Like from the wiki, or was there a certain source that you learned it from?
Well, I can answer that. Personally, I learned from books, actually. I have a couple books. There was one which is called Level Up. I don't remember the author, but if you Google that, like Level Up game design book, it's like a nice introduction, and it's really good for this audience. And also I have a book called David Perry on game design. It's like a huge brick with like brainstorming tools. But in general, like the best way to learn is actually to do it and try it.
To add to that real quick, I think one of the best ways to learn game design, not development, is to play other games. Play other games, look at what works with them, what doesn't, and learn from existing content.
Okay, we'll go to the other side of the room.
I had a question about servers, and when you're getting servers hosted, do you prefer having them hosted from an actual machine that you have in an area, or do you get it hosted online from a website?
In what way, sorry?
Oh, what is it?
Well, a server's a server. It doesn't matter whether we buy it online or whether it's in a location.
Well, for example, like, would you prefer getting it hosted on a website or like with a machine? Does it depend really, or is it the same thing?
Yeah, if you can answer that, then feel free.
Yeah, so basically, from a business perspective, there are two ways to like get servers. The first one is either you go to like a data center near you, and that would be what you mean by getting actual machines. But in the end, like even if you're getting them online or you're renting them on a remote location, well, it's still machines, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. Whenever we get a server, we don't really care. We look at the specs and we go, will that run stuff? Cool, yeah, we'll buy it.
All right, thank you.
That's sort of how it works. To this side.
If you wanted to become like a map builder for any kind of game design groups or anything like that, how would you?
For Minecraft worlds and Minecraft games, the best way and the way that we tend to find people is build stuff, take really nice screenshots of it and put it on something like Planet Minecraft and put all of your work on there, and just people will come and look at it for inspiration. They'll see it and they'll be like, that's the guy I need to build our new tower defense map. And that's pretty much how we found people.
Cool. Nice hat.
Yeah, that is actually a pretty awesome hat. Just be careful that people don't throw Pokeballs at you, though. That might hurt.
I was wondering how, I guess, someone, like, I could become, I guess, a developer for CubeCraft, because I've been programming since I was 12, and I was wanting to be part, I guess, of a project such as this. I'm 15 at the moment, but maybe when I'm older, could I guess, apply to be a developer as well?
Yeah, so we open job applications up every now and again. We do have a minimum age requirement because obviously we pay our developers. We don't expect you to work for free or exposure. But we will happily pay people once they're of age and if they apply and meet all of the criteria we go through. And you'll get to deal with Zed, the wonderful candidate interviewer, and me, who just posts funny memes in our Slack channel. To the other side.
One sec.
Oh, sorry.
I can give it a personal tip. If you want to apply for one of the larger networks, is to have at least like one serious minigame which you gave all your heart into, and like make it like your one true thing. Like you need to have a portfolio of some sort. But just one game is enough. It just needs to be really good.
So basically just like make a mini game, host a server, and like invite one of the other devs to come on and play it or something like that?
Yeah, and have videos of it and stuff ready to go.
Also, bonus points if there are actual players playing it at the moment.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Cool.
What's the recommended amount of dedicated RAM?
So the amount of dedicated RAM we have is 6 terabytes. Which is a hilarious thing to think about, but yeah, we have actually just over 6 terabytes of dedicated RAM at the moment. I was wondering how long someone would ask me that. But yeah, like 6 terabytes of dedicated RAM, hundreds and hundreds of terabytes of storage, and many, many, many gigabits of network traffic.
Thank you.
And DDoS attacks of like 1.1 terabits per second, but that's another part of the universe. Other side.
Hi. I was wondering, how do you deal with version updates of Minecraft itself and making sure that you test previous maps that you've created for previous versions?
So when a new version gets posted, I have a Slack bot that tells me, and then I panic and tell the developers there's a new version. And I'm like, there's a new version. And then everybody panics and checks everything. It depends. You guys can probably speak
I can add something, is that the reason we're using Spigot is that it's the most popular, and it has this big open source backing of people who contribute together to make sure that stuff works with new versions.
Yeah. And then we also work on our own ports of stuff to make sure things work version to version, which can be quite fun. When sounds don't get mapped correctly and stuff, we have to go and put fixes in for stuff like that.
So basically, we check everything.
Yeah, we get Minecraft and we play it, and it's great because we get paid to.
I was wondering, what software would you recommend for starting off? Because I'm starting off, I want to start off to code Minecraft plugins, and what would be the best software that you would recommend for starters?
Yeah, so I recommended the IntelliJ idea. And you can also use Eclipse. And what I recommend is, if you have some experience with Java, is to go on the Bucket wiki. It's a bit outdated because Bucket is outdated, sadly. But if you Google it, Bucket, B-U-K-K-I-T, wiki, there's going to be there's a nice article. That's where I started learning plugin development.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, IntelliJ, and there's some really good YouTube tutorials, which is how I made a plugin that was never used, but I told it.
How much data do you think that your server takes up?
In terms of traffic or in terms of physical disk space?
Physical disk space.
Marco, how much physical disk space do we use? Several terabytes. I would say a lot. I know our bandwidth is, are we in petabits yet, or are we at petabytes per month, or?
Well, depending on the traffic, say usually during highest peak season.
Yes or no?
Holiday seasons, we use about half a petabyte of bandwidth.
So about half a petabyte of bandwidth a month.
Also, another statistics is like, for the bigger networks, a world is between like 50 megabytes and 150. And the world, like, all of them is between like 50 gigabytes and 100, depending on the network.
Cool. Thank you.
But we try to keep our plugins small, otherwise when we do an update, we just use all our traffic, which is fun. Question?
I have two questions. Firstly, how did it take to grow such like a big server? Like,
as in, what did it take or how long?
How long and what did it take?
Like, so I'd say, well, we've been doing it, what, 3 years now?
Nearly 4.
Yeah. Nearly 4 years, wow. That's a long time. But what we did was we focused purely on creating our own games rather than just copying other people's ideas. We obviously looked at what other people are doing, saw where we could make improvements, and looked where we can make it our own. And as I was saying, with our build team, we try to make the best maps that we can so they're nice to play with. And your second question?
And is it like hard to manage all those servers? Because you said before you have like 2,000 like servers. Just
It's spectacularly easy to manage that many servers because I just shout at Marco in the office and things just work. We had a fun story. Sorry, I do. I shout and it's like it's broken and it gets fixed. But we had a server, when you've got that many servers, we had game 20 for some reason was broken for months, and we had it on our status screen, and it just became an in-joke that no one fixed it, so I just coded it to go green, and we just assumed it was fixed.
The real answer is it's pretty hard.
Yeah. Technologically, it's quite hard, but there are automated systems that try and manage it. But Marco does a fantastic job at keeping those
Also,
online.
I'd like to add that managing the servers is as much part of the problem as providing the gameplay, okay?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll leave it at
that. Find a friend who's good at it, which is what Luke did when he was starting CubeCraft. He got Marco on board, and Marco does the physical side of it, and Luke just got to make games and do that.
Okay. How long does it typically take to make a minigame?
It depends a lot. I mean, we've had games take many, many months, and we've had games that we have the idea and they're done 2 weeks later. It depends on the scale of the game. It depends on how much time people working on it have, and
it depends on the complexity of the game as well. So, I mean, a good example would be Free Build, which was down for like 7, 8 months, and our community was asking for it all of the time, and it's like we wanted to get it out, but we'd added so many new features to it that no one's done, and it's not even released yet. It's released hopefully after MINECON, because it's ready. It's just we were at MINECON, and deploying a game 24 hours before you get on an 11-hour flight is not a good idea. So we waited for that, and there are so many new things in there that the community will love, but it took so long to get all of those features in because it was new stuff that no one had done before.
Also, I'd like to add, from a personal experience, I like a game to take between 2 weeks and a month and a half max for motivation and to stay in it.
Yeah.
And like they mentioned, it's all based on the game features. But I can give you an example. I know Hypixel Skywars took 1 week to do.
Yeah.
Obviously, we were all not sleeping and eating pizza, but yeah.
Some games
depends on the game.
Some games me and Luke, when he was up last summer, we would mock up a game in a day. and get something working. That was a lot of tea was drunk that week, but you know, it's like that, and we can do it, but we don't like to.
And like, depending on the game, you'll see kind of the process we go through there, and depending on the game, some bits will be elongated and will take longer. So like for complex games like tower defense, then planning will take much longer than a kind of simple game like Spleef, where your planning is, we're going to do Spleef, and then your dev at times really short because it's a simple game, and then the whole process is just much slimmer. So again, it's like the complexity of the game.
Yeah. Your question, sir?
Okay, I've got 2 questions. Number 1, which one of you is the youngest and how young are you?
Ginger Geek is the youngest. He is 16, and I am currently his representative guardian, so...
Cool. And second, with the new Black Band game, when you get onto the Black Band website that plays the music, you have it so that you don't have to enter your username, it automatically detects it. How did you do that?
Well, it does it by IP. So when you log in through the web client, we know your IP. And when you log in on the Minecraft server, we also know your IP. So we just match them. Yeah.
And if you have 2 accounts, like an account and an alternate account up on 2 sessions.
If you can play Block Band on 2 accounts at the same time, I will happily make a feature to fix that, but good luck keeping keyboard focus in both. But you can choose this isn't me, and you can put a username in, because we needed that in testing, because we all have the same IP address.
In the case of Block Band, we didn't really try to make it like bulletproof. That's why you're able to enter your own username. And you can even listen to other people's music too.
Yeah, if you really wanted to. I mean, feel free, but that's up to you.
Thanks.
No worries.
Hello, what kind of things are you guys doing to attract new players when you're at this big of a scale, like in the Minecraft community?
As in seeing new players and how they go through. So we have our own analytics system that we've developed, and that goes into our database, and we can go and look at that.
And I have one last question. How do you guys determine what games go on the network and which games reject?
Testing.
John
mentioned, the is it fun testing.
Yeah.
And that we reject games because they sound fun in theory and they sound good on paper, and then you make them and you realize this game is awful. No one's ever going to want to play it. And that game doesn't get released.
You would be surprised how many times a game can get built onto the test network. We can have maps built for it, and we'll play it, and we'll be like, it's not really what I thought it was. We just won't release it, and it just goes.
That is quite a rare occurrence, because obviously we don't want to invest loads and loads of dev time into and builder time into doing that. So it's usually we'll sit down as a whole management team with a design spec, and we'll go through it and make sure, is this going to be a fun game? Because we can all talk about it, but it's a very rare occurrence, and often we'll get to a thing and we go, oh, actually, this game would be perfect if we just did that at kind of like an early testing stage. And so we very rarely get to a stage of having to bin everything, because that is disastrous from a business perspective.
I'd like to add also that you're going to have multiple game design documents at the same time, because a lot of people come up with ideas and they're going to write their stuff. And then it comes to a point that you need to choose one, right? Even before scrapping them, you need to choose one between your choices. And you're always going to have choices, to be honest, because it's easy to... my point is that there are basically 3 types of game, the way I see it. You can categorize all games. Either it's going to be a hardcore game, like Skywars, or survival games. These are the types of game which are purely, really close to Minecraft, hitting people with swords, and then you have a kit system, and then these are the games which are grindy, and people get into, and that's where we keep our players, basically. And then there are YouTuber games, I like to call. It's games which are really flashy, like Mineware, for example. It's a game which is built for people to create videos, and this will bring new players. And the third type is just showpiece games. For example, Turbo Kart Racers or Block Band, for example. It just means, oh, we're able to do this, and we're the best because of it.
Yeah.
So these 3, when you combine them, you need to balance to keep your player count and bring new players. Yeah. But yeah, basically when you're choosing the game, just keep these 3 things in mind.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing is, just because one game idea is bad, you might come up with an idea 6 months later and go, oh, actually, that would work really well with that idea. And you end up combining things together. But next question.
Alrighty, so if your servers go down, how do you handle it, and what do you do to solve it?
It would depend entirely on what part had gone down. If it's a core piece of infrastructure, it will just be a case of restarting it, getting error logs, seeing what went wrong, and hoping everything works again. If it's something like one game server that's corrupted, it's a case of resetting it through our tools and doing that. But because of the size we are, we have a lot of redundancy. You know, there's 3,000 back-end servers. If one of them goes down, like I was saying, it's like, oh, great, it's down. We'll fix that on Monday morning, and it really doesn't matter. But yeah, it's seeing what's down, seeing how we need to deal with it, but it depends on each thing, how we do it.
We have a lot of monitoring in place, so if something...
Lots of monitoring.
Yeah, lots of monitoring. So if something happens, like even a traffic spike or a CPU spike, we'll get a notification about it. And based on that, we can act on it. And also if it's like a non-hardware issue or like an issue which is quite hard to spot, we have staff and people playing all the time, and it'll either be a staff will raise it and then we look into it. So again, it does kind of depend on the incident, but like we have myself and Marco and Luke, we're kind of on call 24/7. If something goes wrong, we're a phone call away to fix it, even if it is 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, I also get all of the notifications, and if no one's acted on them, then I physically go and wake somebody up. So it tends to work out quite well like that.
And I sleep.
Yeah, he gets to sleep. It's great. We have an emergency system where staff can ring us in an emergency, and it tells us what the emergency is, and it's like the most frustrating phone call to get at like 3 a.m. in the morning. But yeah, I hate that system, and I built it. Next question.
What are some ideas for minigames or minigames that you have scrapped, and why did you scrap them?
Some that I've had, we tried to start doing, and then no one could figure out the maths of what I wanted to do, and then we just stopped because it involved a lot of Googling and we couldn't figure it out. There's been, yeah, this was before you were part. This was like me and Luke on a Wednesday night were like, this would be a really cool game, and then we just, some ideas you just can't do in Minecraft. There's also a lot of the ideas we've had that have been scrapped might come back in the future, so I don't want to say specifics, but I like the philosophy of just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, which we don't use a lot of resource packs because, again, we have low-powered computers that are playing on us, so we have to limit ourselves in that way as well, so yeah.
Hi. First of all, if you haven't installed the Giphy plugin on Slack, I highly recommend.
Oh yeah, we have it.
Excellent. How many developers do you normally assign to the average game to actually make it?
Usually one, but if it's a bigger project that's going to take a longer time, there might be 2 or 3 on a game. We have developers, and we have junior developers as well, who are typically, you know, kids who are still in school who are learning and not necessarily as proficient as a full developer. So sometimes we'll have a full developer and a junior developer working with them.
Great, thank you.
I can add that the reason why I work in Minecraft is because it lets me do a lot of creative work without having to do all of the traditional stuff in game development, which would take more people.
Yeah. Your question, sir?
Does your server involve with other servers? Do they interact with them? And also, do you have staff applications?
Sorry, what was that?
Do you interact with other servers, and do you have staff applications?
Oh, as in, do we speak to other servers? Yeah, like we're good friends with most of the people who are in the top 10 Minecraft servers because it's quite good, because if they go down, we suddenly get a traffic spike and things like that. So, as happened at the opening ceremony. But yeah, so we all speak. We have shared Slacks and stuff, and it's nice. And staff applications are on our forums. I don't think we have any open at the moment, do we?
They are open at the moment.
Oh, they are open at the moment. Oh, okay. Sweet. There's your answer.
Probably a fairly open-ended question, but what was the hardest part of, I imagine, just exploding in popularity at some point? Did you guys experience burnout? Did you have a lot of trouble keeping up with servers?
At that point, we had one developer, so that was fun.
Managing it is probably the hardest part. Managing the growth, the explosive growth.
Yeah, it was catching up with the growth. So like we went from having one developer to having 2 to having 20, and that's a very big change to have, and that's what I say about source control, because you go from having all of your games and they're an initial commit, and you're trying to get it, and yeah, the growth, it was the change in staff was the biggest thing, but
Yeah.
Also, as a person who has to wake up people at 3 a.m., you guys are awesome.
Yeah, it's great. Like, I live with Marco. We share an apartment. So, yeah, it's fantastic. He gets woken up and I get woken up. So, all for Minecraft.
How much do your servers cost?
Billions.
Yeah.
And how do you manage how do your staff team and development team work?
In Java. They work remotely, a lot of them. Some of them are in the office, and we manage everything through Slack and Active Collab, and that's how most people keep on top of things.
With the developers, generally it's pretty open-ended, so they can choose. We have a selection of projects which we as management want kind of doing, and developers quite often can just pick and choose between what they want to do, or like often we had Mini coming up with quite a few. I know, with quite a few game ideas, and we've just said, oh, that's an awesome idea, and just let them get on with it. So we're quite open-ended, especially on the dev perspective of what you can do. We're not like a massive dictatorship in any way.
Yeah. Right. Sweet. Sorry, we are running slightly over, but we'll try and answer all of your questions before they throw us off.
What game took you the longest to make, and which one is the buggiest?
All of them.
No, Arcade is the buggiest.
Arcade has the most bugs. Free build is probably the thing that's taken us the longest because of what's in it. And the moment that's released, I will be like, oh, thank goodness that's finally out. But yeah, that's definitely the longest project we've had. The buggiest, minor wear in testing was fun. I used to get stuck in the floor a lot, but other than that, it got fixed before release.
The longest is actually hard to define because you can either have longest how many days or longest how much time you put in it.
Yeah.
As in days.
Free build, without a shadow of a doubt.
I have 2 questions. One, if you have like a map idea for like Egg Wars, how do you submit it?
The forums, if people like it and lots of people talk about it, then fantastic, we'll probably see it.
And then 2, in the lobby, why doesn't the golf work?
That's a very fun story, and it's also a very long story. But the TLDR is, it was meant to be in the release, and then it didn't work, so we took it out. Because it's a very buggy mechanic to try and do in Minecraft. Again, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
Well, what is the best way to synchronize data like statistics, achievements through a bungee cord server?
Not MySQL, which is what we use.
So a more kind of long answer. It depends what kind of transfer you're doing. If it's instantaneous, you want some sort of instant communications platform like possibly Redis or RabbitMQ or something like that, which allows instant communications between multiple applications. But if you're looking at persistence of actually storing achievements, then either structured data store like MySQL or unstructured like Mongo
is a good idea.
Is a good idea.
My take on it is that it is a pretty difficult question, and most business, their core point is to figure out these problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to address this first. I am not an active CubeCraft player to start off. I have only logged on once, however. What would you say that you do in order to keep ahead of other networks such as Mineplex and Hypixel? How would you say that you go about doing that, and what would you say that you do differently? And second, what reason, and correct me if I'm wrong, what reason did you have to fully push your network over to 1.9 despite a large portion of the community being part of 1.8, and for the individuals who play 1.8, they wouldn't want to take the time to go to 1.8. What advantages did you see in doing that?
So I can answer your first question with your second question, which is we constantly try and use the latest version of Minecraft, which none of the other large networks try, and we try to take full advantage of those versions as well. Obviously, we've seen that change now, but we tried to do 1.9 straight away. We wanted the features, we wanted things like the new PvP, we wanted the Shulkra, and eventually the Elytra, and all of those new features, because again, it allows us to create new games that just can't exist in 1.8. we do have support for 1.8 now because we were able to add it through our stack. And the other thing that we do to try and keep ahead is we just try and create the best content that we possibly can, including the builds, everything. We always try and better ourselves. And you can sit and you can look at your competitors and go, oh, but they're doing this. And if you're just bothered with what they're doing, it's like you don't look at what you're doing. So you just sit and you go on your maps and you go, well, this needs fixing or this needs bettering, and we just hope that our community loves it. And we listen to our community because we're not bothered about pulling players away from the other top 10 servers. We're bothered about the experience for our players. And reading what the communities say and bringing back things like 1.8, that's what we want. We've always been focused on our own community, not what other people are doing.
Okay, do you ever have any future plans to create, despite, even if individuals can join using 1.9, do you ever have plans for a 1.8 PvP game for the users who enjoy the 1.8 PvP?
Yeah, so you've played CubeCraft once. We have 1.8 support and we have full 1.8 PvP.
Oh.
You can join with 1.8, 1.9, and 1.10 now. And
I mean,
you can,
like the 1.8 PvP feature, as in
yeah, we have that.
You have the ability to spam click with
Yeah, we have that in some of our games. We have 1.8.
You can play Egg Wars and Sky Wars at 1.8.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
No worries.
Do you conject Mineplex will ever be the #1 server? And if so, how?
If they continue to build great content, then hopefully their community will love it. And if they do what we do, which is listen to the community, then yeah, there's no reason they can't be. There's no reason any server can't be the leading Minecraft server. It's getting harder and harder to get into that top 10 because of the way Minecraft is becoming a slowly younger community that's focused on Pocket Edition and things like that. But there's no reason that none of the top 10 can suddenly get a huge leap in players. It's all about creating the best content you can, and that's what we try.
We don't really compare ourselves against other servers. It's like we're not really bothered what the other servers do because we're friendly with them. If they do well, we're actually happy because having good competition is good. But we won't compare ourselves against Hypixel or Mineplex or any of those. We'll compare ourselves against ourselves before we did it, and it's just about bettering ourselves rather than going, oh, we want to be this person, because we're all pretty friendly, and at MINECON we'll all sit down and have a chat and a laugh with all the other people. It's just about trying to make the best stuff for us.
When you run a 100-meter sprint, you don't run it looking back at the other people. You run focused on your lane, and that's what you do in Minecraft. It's focusing on what you're doing. What the other people do is second, really.
You are your own best competitor.
Yep.
Do you have any advice for solo creators or creators who can't work in a very high production team?
Try and create your own server, and then it's your own destiny on what you want to do. Or try and find a group of people who don't want to work in a high production team and make a low production team. It's entirely up to you. Or again, go and get a job at somewhere and explain to them that's the kind of developer you are. Most people will try it. We tend to be quite fitting with our developers. Some of them do have certain requirements, some of them work certain hours, some of them don't want to work for 6 months, and that's fine, but as long as we know that.
If you're a solo developer, what you need to keep in mind is that Rome wasn't built in one day. Whenever you sit down to write code, and you need to do it basically every day to stay to stay in the mood. Yeah, so you need to keep in mind that it's a persistence game. You need to stay focused and disciplined.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries.
How long do you spend preventing cheating in your minigame?
So anti-cheat is one of the holy grails of minigames because it constantly evolves. And we're constantly working on it, as we always have been. But it's a very hard thing to nail down because we can go and put a really good anti-cheat and a very strict policy in, but we have a lot of players who play from places like South America and Spain where internet connections might have higher latency, so what looks like flying isn't. And trying to get the balance of those is really, really hard without actually testing on high latency connections, which is something we constantly have to do. We're constantly working on anti-cheat, to answer your question.
Anti-cheat's kind of an issue across the entire games industry, and there isn't really even big companies like Rockstar and your League of Legends. They still have issues with modded clients and hacked clients. it's a really hard thing because as you evolve your anti-cheat, your modded clients evolve, and it just becomes a cycle of a cat and mouse chasing around, and it's trying to get an anti-cheat which just works, which is actually a kind of a...
The easiest way to sort of stop hacking is try and make the process for people to report it easier, try and make our staff more free to go through games, and have those privileges that they can deal with it should it arise. But it's a constant issue, and there's two big issues in the Minecraft community, which is hacking in games and DDoS attacks, and they're like the two biggest things when you become a Minecraft server that you sort of have to deal with, which is unfortunate, but it's there. Cool. That's the last question, and that wraps us up. So thank you for coming and visiting us. We've got some cards if people want them, and T-shirts if people really want them. But yeah, give us a shout afterwards. Thank you.